Temple of Philae. The story of a temple for the worship of the goddess Isis in the heart of the Nile. Built by King Ptolemy II. Philae Temple. In the midst of the immortal Aswan Nile, the Philae Temple is located, the jewel of the Nile temples, and one of the oldest ancient Egyptian Nubian temples. It was known in Egyptian texts as the dividing line, on an island in the middle of the Nile, and the history of an ancient civilization and one of the Nubian monuments that were rescued from drowning after the construction of the High Dam, an island located in the middle of the Nile River. It is one of the strongest fortresses along the southern borders of Egypt, and separates the Nile into two opposite channels in Aswan. It had the Philae Temple and moved from its original place on Philae Island and was assembled on Agilika Island, following the construction of the High Dam. Philae Temple. The Philae Temple witnessed a great turnout of tourists from different countries of the world who were keen to visit the ancient monuments and enjoy the ancient Egyptian civilization, and to visit the temple, which is an island in the middle of the Nile River and one of the strongest fortresses along the southern borders of Egypt. What is the story of Philae Temple? The Philae Temple, whose construction began during the reign of King Ptolemy II, and many Ptolemaic kings contributed to its construction, which was dedicated to the worship of the goddess Isis, is the main temple on the island, in addition to many temples, including the Temple of Hathor and the Temple of Horus. The oldest known monuments of the temples of Philae Island date back to the era of King Taharka, one of the kings of the 25th dynasty. Philae Temple. Since the completion of the construction of the first Aswan Dam in 1902 AD, the waters of the Nile surrounded the temple and the island of Philae most of the year, including the valuable archaeological stocks it contains, and with the near completion of the construction of the High Dam, during the era of the late President Gamal Abdel Nasser, in 1960 AD, the situation worsened. The island and its antiquities are threatened with drowning completely and forever, which prompted the Egyptian government to conduct talks to save the Philae Temple from the dangers of rising water levels. In May 1968, the Egyptian government decided to move this group of temples, including the Temple of Philae, and rebuild it on the neighboring island Agilika, 600 meters from Philae Island. UNESCO, which in turn decided to launch on September 22, 1968, a global appeal to save the monuments of Nubia. Philae Temple. Stages of the Philae Temple Rescue Project. Work on photography and archaeological drawing began in 1972 AD, and in 1974 AD, a temporary metal dam consisting of 2 rows of steel plates was built around the island, between which 1 million cubic meters of sand were emptied, to prevent the flow of water into the island. All the archaeological blocks of the Temple of Philae were dismantled and transferred, and they were about 4,200 archaeological blocks, to the island of Agilika, in 1977 AD, and finally the transfer and construction of parts of the Temple of Philae were completed and reinstalled accurately, and its inscriptions were preserved, most of which were melted, and it was opened to visitors in the year 1980 AD. The name Philae or Philae goes back to the Greek language, which means beloved or beloved. As for the Arabic name for it, it is Anas al-Wujud, relative to the legend of Anas found in the stories of 1001 Nights. The end, because it was the last border of Egypt in the south, and the worship group was dedicated to the worship of the goddess Isis, but the island contained temples of Hathor, Amenhotep, and other temples. If you want to go hiking, spend a winter vacation, enjoy an interesting cruise and stunning landscapes, all the way to a heritage temple. Its walls carry many stories and secrets, so you must go to the south and visit the Philae Temple on Agilika Island in Aswan, which is considered one of the most famous tourist attractions there, and what distinguishes that temple is that it contains many pieces from different eras besides being located on a very wide area covering most of the island. Description of Philae Temple. The Temple of Isis is the main temple on the island, as it is one of the largest and most important monuments within the group of temples built on the island of Philae. The temple currently occupies the proceeds of the area of Agilika Island. The main courtyard of the Temple of Isis includes the building of Al-Mamzi, or what is called the birth house, which is the place where the rituals of celebrating the birth of the god took place, and the kings were keen to participate in these rituals, confirming their belonging to the dynasty of this god, and strengthening their control over the country. Also has a large number of statues of the kings of ancient Egypt on the island of Philae. The island includes a small group of Greek and Roman temples, such as the cabin of Nectanebo I, and 2 rows of columns that date back to the Roman era, in addition to the Imhotep Temple, which dates back to the Ptolemaic period. In addition to the Temple of Hathor and the Cabin of Trajan or the Bed of Pharaoh, which is the building that Emperor Trajan built to worship Isis, it is one of the most important Roman monuments that were on the island. Trajan's building consists of a rectangular room, surrounded by 14 columns with capitals decorated with inscriptions of flowers and plants, while the capitals of these columns take the shape of the head of the god Hathor, and the walls of the room are filled with many inscriptions, in which the emperor appears burning incense to the god Isis, and offering wine to the god Hathor. Reasons for naming the temple. At the Philae Temple. The word Philae is derived from the Greek language. It is derived from the word Philae, meaning the beloved. It was known in Arabic literature as Anas, due to its association with the legend of Anas, which is found in the stories of 1001 Nights. As for the ancient Egyptian and Coptic name, it is Bilak or Bilak, which means the limit or the end, because it was the last border of Egypt in south activities that you can. I practiced it at Philae Temple. The temple can only be reached by a Nile cruise by motor or sailing boats in the Nile River, and during this trip you can take many pictures of the picturesque landscape surrounding the temple. And when you set foot on Agilika Island, you must be dazzled by the sight of huge columns and murals with picturesque inscriptions and drawings that tell many secrets, such as the legendary love stories that the temple witnessed, along with many stories that represent a mixture of several eras. You can also take a lot of pictures. The visitor can also watch the sound and light show in the temple at night, which is presented in different international languages, as if the visitors to the temple moved on a journey to the distant past, as if the legend revived a legend of love. Isis and Osiris through dazzling lighting. Isis and Osiris through dazzling lighting and attractive music with a voice that narrates and brings you history and events as if you were living the events at the moment. You can also take a walk, listen to the tour guide, and try to imagine that history that contains many secrets, and you can enjoy being in the middle of this temple with all its antiquities. Philae Temple Site. The Philae Temple is located on Agilika Island, south of Lake Nasser, 500 meters from Philae Island, in the middle of the Nile in Aswan.